for coming, and we appreciate y'all and for coming. So, and then I'd like to start off the meeting with a little moment of silence. Just kind of reflect on, like I always say, reflect on the past of what happened to the what's happening in the system, and praying for everybody going towards the future. Keep in mind that this busy time of the year. Everybody's got things to do, places to be, parties to go to, and just keep in mind and be safe. I know we want everybody back in January and healthy and rested. As Michael always says in his weekly Friday meetings to all the teachers and staff and everybody, we like to see you recharged, rested, and because that's the only everyone can benefit from teachers being rested and everybody for the children. So, at first we'll have a moment of silence, and then we'll stand for the pledge. Thank you. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call roll.
Caruso.
Here.
Daniel.
Here.
Dryden. Hartsfield. Jacobs.
Here.
Mabry.
Here.
Nodder.
Here.
Rochelle. Weathers.
Here.
6 present, 3 absent.
6 present. We have a quorum. Thank you. Recognition for tonight, I think we're going to reverse it and go with the student recognition, and that's going to be for South Lawrence Elementary, Miss Snyder. Please make the record show Ms. Dryden was here.
Please stand here. Good evening. I am honored to be presenting our outstanding student for South Lawrence. And outstanding is an understatement. Actually, she is so outstanding that I've made me some notes, because not that I don't know all of this about her, but if I do not have notes made, I will fail to mention something. She's that awesome. First thing that actually came to my mind, and reason I wanted to, that our administrative team selected her to be our outstanding student, was in reviewing our test data. She always meets or exceeds expectations, which that alone is awesome. But this previous year, she actually had a perfect score in math on our state assessment. And I think that kind of speaks for itself, but not only is a perfect score at any point awesome, in 7th grade math, that is just almost unheard of, because there is a huge step from 6th grade standards to 7th grade standards, which makes that even more difficult to achieve. But this young lady did that. It's Avery Cheatham. Like I said, she has meets or exceeds on all of her state testing. She has always been on the honor roll, has never even made a B, and she is an 8th grader. She is in junior beta, and she not only is in junior beta, she's very active in junior beta. She is an FCA, and she not only is an FCA, she is very active in FCA. She's willing to lead devotionals. She does the prayer, the student-led prayer at ball games. Anything that is needed from her, she steps up and does. You typically don't even have to ask her. She volunteers. She's more than willing to do that. And one of the things impressive about Avery is she's not only highly thought of by teachers and administration, she's also very highly thought of by her peers, because several of the things that I have noted here were peer selections. She's been a homecoming attendant every year she's been at South Lawrence, and her peers make that decision. We made a change this year. We do character trait recognitions, which in the past had been done by our teachers, but we decided it would probably mean more to the students if their peers selected them. Well, she had always been selected for different character trait awards when teachers were doing it, but we've transitioned to students this year, but guess what? She has still already been selected for a character trait by her classmates. So she is on our student advisory committee at school as well as the district level, and I feel like represents us very well in that capacity. And she just has school spirit. Like she plays sports, but she also is very active and encouraging to the other groups that are going on, even those that she isn't involved in. And I do want to mention, because I think it just speaks to her character, she actually has a basketball game tonight at Columbia Academy. But when I shared that she was our selection for outstanding student, she wanted to come and be a part of the recognition rather than just her name be called. So she is going to go to be with her team following here. That's why I had requested that this be done first. But it was important enough to her to come here and miss the beginning of her ball game. So I'm so proud of her.
Next on the agenda tonight is retired teacher educator. Mr. Knight, thank you. Yeah, sure. And before you get settled, I kind of add something here. Miss Methan, what an outstanding educator, retired. So she's helped me tremendously in my tenure as a board member, and this is well observed. So congratulations on behalf of myself and the board, and I'll turn it over.
Well, good evening. A little background information before I start. We have approximately 7,000 students and 1,000 employees in the Lawrence County school system, 40 of whom are secretaries and bookkeepers. We all know how important they are in keeping us straight and to make things run smoothly. Tonight, I would like to honor one recently retired secretary with the Ethel Young Benson Award of Excellence. And I can think of nobody that would deserve this anymore. Sheila Methan was employed in September 2003 for 20 years with a financial institution holding an associate's degree in business from Columbia State Community College. She began as a Title I educational assistant at Leoma Elementary School. After 2 years, she transferred to Lawrenceburg Public School as a Title I assistant for 1.5 years. She then transferred to the central office as the secretary to instructional supervisors and the director of schools. In addition to her regular duties as a secretary, Sheila assisted with many projects and programs that included, and this is just a partial list, Fair Art, Knowledge Bowl, Retired Teachers Luncheon, chamber events, central office events, Heroes Banquet, to name a few. And I had the distinct pleasure of working with her on the Knowledge Bowl, and I'm hoping we can keep her coming as a volunteer there. She worked with 4 directors of schools in her career: Larry Davis, Dr. Bill Heath, Johnny McDaniel, and Michael Atkins. Several board members, supervisors, and central office staff, all over almost 20 years of service. She retired in June 2023. This is a direct quote from Sheila. Quote, "It was an honor and privilege to get to work at LCSS. It's a great place to work, exclamation point. I greatly enjoyed and appreciated the opportunities I had. LCSS is part of my family and will continue to be. I made lifelong friendships that I will always cherish." And the reciprocal of that is true of all the employees in the system. So that's the kind of person she is. She has her family here. Carol, her husband. Nathan, I think, is still working as a highway patrol. I just found out. I didn't know that. So that's good. Daughter Sarah, and her husband Cayman is not here, but our granddaughter Aubrey Claire, she's still here? Yeah. She's out there. They're here to share in this honor. So we really do appreciate Sheila, and we miss her a lot. So everybody give her a round.
We'll get her in here. We'll get her over here. You bet. One, two, three. There they are. We smile? You can smile? All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Good job.
Like I said earlier, well deserved, well deserved. Moving on, I don't believe there's any public comments tonight, so we'll move on. Does any other board members have anything to add to this agenda for tonight? Any other board members? No? I believe we have one I would like to add on number 7. Other items for consideration, and put it under C, and that would be, I think we had some discussions last time, or I think it was after the meeting or something, about prior approval for executive committee, so I'd like to put that on there for tonight for discussion, or possibly some kind of a vote. So that will be under C, number 7C. Moving on, consent items. Do I have a motion to from A to C?
We need to remove those.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. Also, there's a couple items to be removed under 4. I think it's went through item number 4. 4 is concrete pads for the 6 greenhouses, funding sources, innovative grant. And under 7, same article, it would be virtual reality goggles. So if we would please remove those. Very well. Any other things removed?
Mr. Christian?
Go ahead.
Why are we removing?
Go ahead.
Dr. Mabry, on item 4, number 4, we did not receive any bids for the concrete pads, so we're going to have to reassess that and determine what we're going to do there. There weren't any bids submitted to us. And then number 7 under 4, I'm not sure we've received any quotes or documents.
We received the quote late. I
Yes.
did receive it today. take it off. Because we haven't had time to review that, but I did actually propose that.
Back on the concrete pads, can our maintenance not do that?
I don't know that we have gotten that far yet with Mrs. Watson.
We were having to bid it because it was gonna be so much. That's why we had to bid it in paper. They could do the prep work, but not pouring.
You okay? I mean, that good, Dr. Mason? Okay, moving on, consent items. I'd like to have approval of motion for A through E.
Move we approve.
We got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Moving on to two report items under school report, and that would be Miss Shannon Snyder. She's still here? Did she leave? Oh, there she is.
Okay, I had submitted the outline that I have to Ms. Crystal Kaiser, so I'm assuming that you have that in front of you. Some of the things I'm going to highlight, I'm not going to go over everything that is on here for time purposes, but that is why I wanted you to have a copy in your hand, because I wasn't going to go over all of it. I want to start out by, in the 21-22 school year, we had received reward school recognition, and the reason I mention that, even though this is this year's report, is the state hasn't released that information, but we are very hopeful, based on what we know of our scores at this point, that we potentially could be a reward school again. And not only as being a reward school an honor, but it would especially be an honor to be what I would call back-to-back reward school recognition. So we're super excited about that even being a possibility. With some of the changes that have been proposed at the state level, it is kind of hard to anticipate what some of that may look like. But based on what we know, we're feeling good about that. Also, they are later reporting so far as the school report card grade this year. But we are also hopeful, based on the information that we have at this time, that there is a high likelihood that we would have an A status. So again, those are only anticipations. They aren't necessarily, haven't been confirmed. So far as our school about accountability, talking growth opposed to achievement, because I've mentioned both of those on there. I'm sure you know from these reports, but just because there's so many different things mentioned, I do want to throw out, just so you kind of know what we're speaking of. Student growth is showing the progress that an individual student has made themselves, whereas achievement is showing meets or exceeds expectations in regard to the state standards. So they measure us in two different categories. But our overall score on a scale of 0 to 4, our final score was a 3.9. And that is taking in achievement and growth. That's why it is overall. There are 4 categories that are scored. It's all students economically disadvantaged and students with learning disabilities. And on the scale of 1 to 4 in achievement, we were a 4 with all students and economically disadvantaged. And our students with learning disabilities scored a 3. And that is an area that I was especially proud of, even though it wasn't the 4, that had been an area of focus for us because it previously had not been as high. So we made a huge gain there. Our growth, all 3 categories were a 4. Our chronic absenteeism, all 3 categories were a 4. And I can't help but believe the students being there made a difference in their performance. So I do think the attendance does play a role in that. So far as the TVOS growth scale, that's a scale of 1 to 5. Our overall composite was a 5. Our literacy was a 3. Numeracy, 5. And literacy and numeracy, 5. So obviously there, we are very proud of those scores, but our area that we plan to focus on is literacy because we want to bring that 3, hopefully to a 5. And I will speak in just a minute about some of the things that we have in place, hopefully to reach that goal. But also our achievement of proficiency of met or exceeded expectations, we were actually very proud of as well. We had kind of been asked to switch our focus from growth, which is what we've pretty much focused on in the past, to achievement. And all 4 subject areas, we had an improvement, and we actually had a significant improvement in several of those. Our ELA had been 39.9% the previous year, and it was up to 42%. Our math had been 43.8%, and it increased to 51.6%. Our science had been 36.1%, and it increased significantly to 53.9%. And our social studies was 53.8%, and it increased to 60.7%. So with it being our area of focus, and we increased in all 4 subject areas, we were especially proud of that. Some of the things that we have started doing to try to get that literacy from a 3 to a 5 is we've implemented what we call a Books in Hands initiative, and that seems very, very simple, but sometimes with positive things also comes some negative. And with the increase in technology, we feel like a negative that we were seeing is you just don't see children reading like you used to. So we are trying to actually bring back having books in hands. There was a time where it was just understood if there was any kind of interruption, you picked up your library book or your AR book and you read it. Well, we had kind of gotten away from that, but we're trying to go back to, if your work is finished, you read. If the teacher gets a phone call, you read. If a classmate gets sick and the teacher's having to tend to them, the rest of the class reads. And we feel like that we're seeing positive results from that. Even some of our students that didn't think that they really like to read, they like it a lot more than they would like to admit. Also, another addition that we have that directly connects to literacy that we're very excited about is we have started an electronic newspaper that is completely done by our students. Now, obviously, we do have a teacher leader, but they've titled it, they write all of the articles, they do all of the research, they even edit for one another. It is called The Voice of the Stallions, and it's an electronic newspaper, and we feel like that them taking ownership in that is also increasing their literacy skills. We've really been utilizing our reading interventionist positions. So I want to take this opportunity to say we feel like those positions are making a huge positive impact. And if there are any way that those could be retained, well, I definitely would strongly recommend that, because it's like the longer we have them, the more things we realize that they can do to benefit our students. And I feel like each year we are getting better at how we're utilizing them. We're continuing to increase our fluency and comprehension. We started a Book Buddies program last year that I had mentioned, but we're trying to grow that even bigger. That's where our older students read with our younger students. We also started a Millionaires Club last year, and we are encouraging increased participation in that, and we are seeing that. We have more millionaires at this point in the year than we did at this point last year. Also, we are really focusing on student conferencing, and our reason for that really is to increase student ownership. We started realizing that a lot of times when students weren't making progress, they didn't really realize what progress needed to be made. So we're trying to do lots more conferencing with them so that they are realizing what it is that they need to do to be a better student. We have several additional academic opportunities for our students. We have the robotics team. We have a career explorations class. They do STEM activities in that, but we do lots of learning of just about careers that are available. We have started doing academic accomplishments on announcements, and students really take pride in being able to have their successes shared. We have a drone team. We've really encouraged the participation of the district-wide spelling bee. I mentioned it last year, but I want to mention it again because I hope to see us continue it. The JA BizTown and the JA Finance Part trips that our students probably would not get to take without help. Those are fabulous so far as preparing them for the future. So I'm hopeful that, that is something that continues. And then, of course, our junior beta and our knowledge bow we've had for some time, but we've tried to really encourage participation in those as well. We do not have any additional sports that we are offering this year. It's pretty much the same. Since I had shared last, our girls were area champions and sectional runners-up in basketball. Our football team, we had a success this year that we were super excited about. They ended up being conference champs, and what was so exciting about this for these guys is last year they had a defeated season. So they went from 1 year of not winning a single game to the following year working extra hard and being conference champs. So we were super proud of them for that. And we also had something else happen that we do not have often at all. We had 2 students that were state qualifiers for cross country. One of them actually placed 6th in the state and was a 6th grader on top of that. So we've been trying to really encourage the participation in cross country. We feel like that's something that can include students maybe that do not participate in some other sports. And so this year we had 2 that were really successful there. We are really enjoying the heating and cooling in our gym, and especially the addition that was made so far as having that in the concession stand in the lobby as well. We are very, very appreciative of the increased number of cameras and hope that plan continues. And we are also very thankful for the roof repair in the gym and in the cafeteria because those were huge needs. There's some other things shared there. I'm not going to share all of that with you, but a lot of it is to do with character. We're really trying to not only focus on academics and athletics, but just simply the people that we are producing so far as our students and their character and their social emotional well-being. So that last section are just things that we're doing there so far as community outreach and things that we're putting in place in that regard. Do any of you have anything for me?
I've got a question. Ms. Snyder, first of all, great report. The school performing superbly, and it's exciting to hear all that. I've been hearing rumors of growth coming into the southern end of the county, coming out of the Huntsville area. Just wondering, are you seeing any effects? What's your student body population? Just give me what your thoughts of, are you seeing that in your school?
We have not, now we have had somewhat of an increase since school started, not a huge increase. And honestly, I don't know, I'm not going to tell you they aren't coming from other places with that being the source of their move, but we had a conversation just a couple of weeks ago that we feel like we're getting them just kind of from random places, like it's not anywhere in particular. Now, is that why they're coming and we just don't realize that's why they're coming? Possibly. But it's right now it isn't a huge increase. It may be. And a lot of times they'll try to transfer either at the end of a grading period, at the end of a semester, or the start of a year. So.
Would you happen to know your population?
I don't know exactly. It's around 550.
Are you using any classrooms that are not, are you using any classroom on wheels? Are you having any of that issue that you have to do, that resources?
I do not have any core instruction classes on wheels. What we are starting to have is like with the addition of the tutoring and the interventionist for RTI and different things like that, we are kind of having a little bit of a shortage in space as far as we feel like that the small groups are very, very effective, but we're running out of locations to have small groups. We actually had that conversation today. It's a positive thing, but then it causes something different. But so far as like my ELA, math, science, social studies teachers, no, none of them are on a cart. But when we break into, our intervention of any type, we are kind of having issue. And see, there was a day where we would just pull them out in the hall. Well, for safety reasons, we don't do that anymore. We don't, we try to keep our students out of just an open space. So we try to have them in a room secured safely. And so that's a little bit more of a problem. Because when we're doing that, we're using everything. Like we have interventions that take place in locker rooms. I mean, we're sticking them everywhere to keep them out of the hallway, but into small groups.
Any other questions? On a side note, how's your dad? Tell him we miss him.
I will. I definitely will. And he is doing well.
Good.
I just tell most anybody that asks me, I feel like he's sad. And that makes me sad, but you couldn't spend 45 years with someone and not be sad when they're gone. So anyway, but he's doing great, and I will tell him. It'll make him feel great to know he was asked about. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, a personnel report. That was in your packet. Does anybody have any questions regarding personnel? It's on your screen. I'll have a few seconds to look it over. Any questions? Very well. Moving on, director's update. Mr. Atkins.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things to share with you. One adjustment on tonight's agenda as well will be a combination of academics and then an update on CTE. The state still has not released data that Mrs. Ridgway feels comfortable standing before you and speaking about. If you ask some questions, she doesn't know if she could answer those and doesn't want to violate the embargo. So she will speak briefly on that, and then Mrs. Watson will speak about some CTE involvements. I will tell you that unofficially of the South Central core, the South Central District schools, about 15 of us, I received notification that our district unofficially is second in achievement this year. We feel really good about that. But again, that's just some data that's been collected by some outside sources and shared that with me. But we feel really good about being second. I think we were fifth last year, and the teachers have done a great job, and I think the principals will echo that. It's the work of the teachers and the students that led to that. A through F ranking, you may be hearing more and more about that. The state announced this morning that they will release the A through F ranking, I think December 20th through the 22nd, somewhere around in there. We were hoping to have that in November, then we were told December 1st, and now we're told December 22nd. Universal school choice, if you are following that, you understand that that has become a hot topic in the state for public education, these educational scholarships and the impact it may have on schools. I will share more information as I learn more about that. Tonight, you're going to be asked to vote on the 24-25 calendar. Just a reminder, we submit that to our teachers in a Google form. We send remind messages. I remind them in the weekly update. We had 376 respondents. 69% of them chose calendar B, and 31% chose calendar C. You'll have that before you. Everest Construction was our recipient to replace doors throughout the county. We are moving forward with that. That is a professional services contract, and we will continue to move forward in getting the doors throughout our campuses, and external doors mainly repaired and replaced in the springtime. Mrs. Elledge, myself, and Mr. Tucker met with county officials about growth in the county, not just in the north, but in the central and in the south. We've opened those discussions. Our projected population by 2030 was estimated around, I think, 50,000. I think that number is now changed and projected to be at 53,000, so that brings serious concerns to school officials in what our building capacity is, what arrangements need to be made, and we're sitting here in almost 2024 and 6 years away. So we've opened those discussions with county officials, and I will be briefing the board on that as we get further into that. It may need to have a sit-down board planning session with county officials and discuss how we will go about determining growth and capacity in our buildings, and we're looking at some companies right now. And again, I will share that with the board at a later date. Much discussion about rejecting federal funds. I share with the board, I say rejecting federal funds by the state government, not the Lawrence County school system. We receive $5.2 million in federal funds, and that's a lot of money that we use to benefit our kids and teachers. It does pay for some salaries, so I've shared with you my feelings on that, I don't think that's a wise move by the state. Invest those monies in the literacy programs that Mrs. Snyder spoke about, the interventionist. Do whatever you got to do, but don't turn money down. And so I've shared my opinion on that with the board. Special Questions Committee, Vice Chair Neidert and Mr. Dryden agreed to represent the board. We met, I believe, Tuesday and developed the questions. We've got the information ready. The survey, Google form survey for deciding if LCEA or whomever enters into negotiations with the board for the memorandum of understanding. That information will go out in the morning, but Mr. Neidert and Mr. Dryden agreed to serve on the Special Questions Committee. We're still working the food service breach. From everything that I've been told from Mr. Hobbs in conversations with those officials, that we do not believe any information was shared in an inappropriate way. There's no evidence to suggest that, but we are continuing to work with the company to ensure that all that information that was breached is safe and secure. We learned that we are considered a fast growth district. There will be some additional funds coming from the state based on our population increases. We will share more information with you about that when I know more information. Remind you of two events. We'll do the State of the System address to the board in January, and we'll also be participating in the first ever State of the County address, and tickets are available for any board member who would like to attend that. Several of you have responded that you would like to attend. We'll take care of the tickets for you. That's January 30th. I believe it's somewhere like 8 to 10:45 in the morning. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll get some information to you. As I mentioned earlier, we're talking with companies about long-range planning. I will share some information with you. I do want to brag on our kids. While we were at TSBA, luckily the Beta Club convention competitions were going on there. 68 entries Lawrence County placed. 68 entries. Now I'm not sure how many kids that is, but we have a number of kids who will go on to national competition. And congratulations to those students, but also congratulations to those principals and those teachers who give of their time to offer that for our kids. And as you can tell, great things are happening in Lawrence County, and it's due to the great people working with our kids. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Atkins? Very well. Moving on to academic report, Ms. Ridgway.
She's first.
So as Mr. Atkins said, I don't have a whole lot to report just because the state has not released it yet. We were told in October that after the state board meeting on the 2nd and 3rd, that they would release that data. They changed some things as far as the state report card, as Mr. Atkins referenced. And so those things are in the verification process. And until they're out of the verification process, they will not release them publicly. They have released that they will tell us what the school report cards are on December 13th to the districts and December 21st to the public. The data that, part of the data that Ms. Snyder was referencing, the heat maps that we got, those are now unembargoed, but that's about the only data that is. So those, we're not allowed to speak about it publicly. We are allowed to use it for school planning. So we have been using that data. The schools have dissected their data. They've gone through and looked at their ELA and their math and their science and their social studies. So that data is being used. It's just an issue of public release. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Ridgeway?
Yes, this is the data coming off the statewide testing back in April.
Yes.
And we have that testing so early in the year so we could get data back, and what is the holdup? Why is it so?
So
do y'all have any knowledge?
we don't have any control over when it comes back, obviously. But we get data trickling in starting in the summer. And we get different reports starting in the summer. We're given an opportunity to, because it's used for accountability, we're given an opportunity to verify that data and appeal any data that we feel is incorrect. So that's by law. So during that process, the data is called what we call embargoed. With the changes, the State Department got, we call it dinged for lack of better terms, but the State Department got dinged by the federal government on their accountability protocol. So through that hindered the data being released because they had to go through the hoops to get approved by the feds before they could release it to us. So some requirements were changed in the process. So that delayed that piece of information. Then now we used to have an accountability system that was the same for the feds and the state. Now it's two separate things. So now after the state board and everything was approved there, we're having to go through a separate verification process for now the state accountability. I know that's a lot, sorry.
No, and really, the reason I'm curious and interested, one of the things that is frustrating to me is, as a board member and talking to our teachers in our system, our teachers are held, they don't have enough time to cover what's in the standard before the testing comes around.
Correct.
And they keep pushing this up earlier and earlier to test earlier and earlier so we can get data back, and then we're 6 months, another half year gone by before they get data back. This thing's...
Like I said, we do get it back for planning purposes. So teachers have seen a certain amount of data. They've seen, as far as I know, they've seen what we have, but we just can't release it publicly. That's just one of because we're in the verification process. One of the things that I do want to bring up to you is that the 4th grade, with the 3rd grade law, those students that fell under the 3rd grade law for retention, possible retention, that went on to 4th grade, they either attended summer school or agreed to attend tutoring, they have to show adequate growth on the 4th grade assessment. The adequate growth is very confusing. It's very confusing to explain. It's confusing to explain to a parent. It is based on their projection to meet or exceed the standards. So if I did not get meets or exceeds on TCAP, I have a projected percentage for meeting meets and exceeds on the 4th grade TCAP. So say that's 11%. Then I've got to increase that percentage, not necessarily my score. And it doesn't make sense. So those are the types of things that happen during the state board meeting, and those are the types of things that we're dealing with as far as data goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Thank you, Ms. Redgrave.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm going to talk to you just real briefly about our CTE programs, where we are and where we're going. And this is a document that I created. Thank you. Just to really put it all out there so we can see a clear picture of the career and technical programs of Lawrence County Schools. Did I give you one, Mr. Atkins?
Okay.
Okay. So on the first page of this document, it tells you what high school CTE programs we've got. And it tells a really cool story in looking at this, that we've worked very, very hard to get equal access across our 3 high schools. When you look at it, you see automotive being one program that is, only offered at Lawrence County High School. But of course, it is a huge program, requires huge space, so that gives you just a little bit of information there. We are looking at the possibility of adding criminal justice in the fall at Summertown High School. That is not decided, but it's a very good possibility. In addition to that, I do want to point out that cosmetology at Summertown High School is another option for this upcoming school year. Cosmetology funding would be through the Innovative Grant, which we're very thankful that the state revised that and made Summertown High School get the same amount of money as the other 2 high schools. If you look below that, you will see the dual enrollment programs that we have. Many of these started way before my time. We've added some things, thanks to Roy Snyder and David Crowell. We've added several things there. I see only lots of opportunity for growth as far as our dual enrollment programs go. We have lots of programs housed on our campuses, and then we have programs that our teachers offer dual enrollment as our employees. So we've got a really unique thing going on with our dual enrollment. Columbia State, we did add a health science dual enrollment program this year, and we just continue to grow that as well with the partners at Columbia State. You will see middle school CTE programs that we have going on. I was really excited to hear Shannon Snyder talk about JA Finance Park in Biztown. That's something that we kind of took under our wing in the career and technical program, so I'm very thankful to hear leadership talk about how valuable that is. On the second page, it tells you what industry certifications we offer within the Lawrence County School System CTE program. We have quite a few, and I'm very thankful for that. We jumped on board several years ago when EPSOS came around and they started talking about the need for industry certifications, and you as a board have made this possible in the local funding. It's very unique to the state of Tennessee. When I talk to other CTE directors, they don't have local funding that pays for students' industry certifications. Many of them are already fretting because once the innovative grant dollars are gone, how they're going to sustain those industry certs at their district. So I'm very grateful for that. Our students attained almost 1,500 industry certs this past school year. In our South Central region, the whole entire South Central region of districts, it was only close to 3,000 certifications. So Lawrence County Schools, I've not even shared, sorry Mr. Atkins, I didn't share that with you, I just learned that. Lawrence County Schools itself had about half of the industry certs for the entire region. We continue with our Work Ethics Matter campaign, growing, doing lots of great things. Tomorrow, we have a really great day in Lawrence County Schools in that we have our Lego robotic competition for our schools tomorrow at First Baptist Church. We'd love for you guys to come. We have students coming onto the CLC site there at First Baptist and all day long. So it's going to be it's one of my favorite days ever. If you'll flip to the back page, this is really a very important piece. I said when I handed you your pieces of documents
that this tells a story of where we are. We've got dual enrollment in almost every single CTE program that we have in Lawrence County Schools. We do have an industry cert in every CTE program of Lawrence County Schools. But if you look at this last page, you see what we don't have in Lawrence County Schools as far as the career and technical programs have. As far as the CTE programs go for the state. And I do want to point out, we have signed a dual enrollment agreement with TCAT Hohenwald for the CDL program. We carried a ton of students over there in the 1st of November to tour the CDL program. So we're thankful for that. But look at the first column where it says information technology. When I created this document and sat down with Mr. Adkins and went over it, I was very disturbed that we do not have information technology within Lawrence County Schools, because when you talk about cybersecurity and all the pieces that are there, we've got to do something with this. Well, TCAT Pulaski reached out to us and have made a wonderful, wonderful proposal to start a dual enrollment information technology program at Lawrence County High School in the fall as sort of a pilot for Lawrence County Schools. So basically, they're willing to put up half of the salary. Lawrence County School System would pick up the other half of that salary, and Lawrence County School System would have to invest in the equipment. So this proposal just took place last week. We met with them. Actually, it was Monday. We met with them on Monday. They were very, very encouraging and were like wanting us to agree right then. But there is space at Lawrence County High School to add this. I see it continuing on at the other two high schools very quickly after the first year. I kind of like to dip my toes in things before we jump in full throttle with the other two high schools. But there is a classroom that was previously a computer lab upstairs at Lawrence County High School. I spoke with Mr. Joyner. He's very supportive of this, especially with it being something that we don't have. We are very, very excited about this possibility. We'll talk more about that later. And then we have some CTE goals at the bottom of this page. Every program benefits from entrepreneurship. If a student is going to start a lawn mowing business, they need some entrepreneurial skills. So that is an area that we would like to see some growth in our program, and offering more female focused programs within our school system. We have tons for our nails. Not that females can't take every single class that we offer, but truth be told, there's some non-traditional areas that I would like to see us improve, and as always, an increase in our EPSOs, our industry certs, our dual enrollment programs. There's always room for improvement. So, if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. Having none?
I've got a comment. I think y'all are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And what I love to see on this list is the addition of middle school CTE programs. And that's what we've talked about that a lot.
Yes, sir.
A lot. And you gotta get them young.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And get them doing something.
I agree. The earlier the better. That's why we take kids in the 5th grade over to the TCATs to
But this is
to
all
tour.
really exciting.
Yeah, we've got great things happening, but there's always room for improvement.
That's
Can I make a comment, Mr.
Right,
Chairman?
yes.
I too, Ms. Watson and the whole CTE department, y'all have done a tremendous job. It wasn't that many years ago that we were reviewing, and we questioned, I think I probably even was the one who questioned you about trying to get what we offer at every high school. And this front page is impressive. Y'all have worked hard, and yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Moving on to LCEA.
I just also want to thank Mr. Neidert and Mr. Dryden for being on the Special Question Committee and meeting with us. We appreciate that. Mr. Adkins has done a lot to help us get the survey, and we just asked, LCSS, that everyone who is eligible that is listening will please vote when you receive the survey or the ballot, and you will get some reminders and things like that, and just, we would love to have 100% participation.
So what is this survey? I mean, what is typically on it, or?
It will ask them if they would like to participate in collaborative conferencing with the board,
Okay.
and if they would, do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
If they would like to participate in collaborative conferencing, then it'll ask them who would they like to represent them. And then a confusing, to some people, question on there, ask if, even if you said no to collaborative conferencing, if collaborative conferencing occurs, who would you like to represent them? And so, you know, it gives them some choices, and it also gives them the opportunity to do a write-in for other, if they would like to do that. Of course, we would hope that they would be more, you know, happy for us to represent them, but we're, you know, we're always open to whatever anyone would like to vote for.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to F, Tennessee Legislative Network. Ms. Jacobs, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Atkins or one of the others that went to, I had a cast on my leg. I couldn't go to the convention. One of them might want to add something to that.
Do we have an update on the convention? Or what?
You want to speak to it, Mr. Weathers? I can give you just a little bit, and then Mr. Dryden can chime in. If you've been to a TSBA event, you understand how successful and how organized those are. For a director, for board members, there's something for everyone. And for me this time, I was able to hear 3 sessions that were outstanding for the work that I do and what we're facing. The onboarding process for teachers. Mrs. Thompson and I have talked about that for a couple of years now, what we can do better when we bring on employees. Well, they had a session for that. Growth in a district. One district was talking about how rapidly they've grown and the challenges of trying to play catch up, being reactive rather than proactive, and got information from them about companies that have helped them now that they wish they'd had 10 years ago. And then collaborative conferencing was a session that they hosted. So those 3 things all appeal to what we're facing right now in Lawrence County. And then several great speakers, inspirational speakers, just a good event. And thankful I could be a part of it.
Anybody else anything there?
Well, I commend what Mr. Atkins just shared with us. One of the impressive things was the organization of the entire conference, and it was prepared and suitable for, well, all members, as far as superintendents, directors, board members, and I would highly recommend new school board members to attend this conference. One session that I attended was very interesting. I always attend it anytime I get to or have the opportunity to hear Chuck Cagle. I take advantage of that opportunity. I did that. That session was simply entitled Ask the Attorney. So there were many questions presented to not only Chuck but other attorneys who were present there. So very informative. 700 plus, I think, school board members and directors in attendance.
Very good. I think we just went over G. So those who attended are very good. Moving on to items for discussion, consideration, and action under 3 executive committee items. There was, I think there was a 1, and I believe that was approved just recently, correct? And that was the Evers Construction contract for a public school safety grant. So, yeah, go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chairman of the board, Evers is the company that submitted information and received the, I guess, the contract, professional services contract to address those exterior doors that we face throughout the county. Mr. Tucker, overseeing safety, using safety dollars from the state. And I think we've allocated around $150,000 to address doors throughout the system. And so this is a professional services contract, much like we have with Mr. Cagle, much like we have with the fire alarm company. They will do the work going forward. All we're asking you to do is to approve the contract for us to spend that $150,000 from safety grant dollars to repair doors, external doors throughout the county.
Make a motion, we approve.
I got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry. Niter.
Yes.
Weathers.
Yes.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 4, budget items for consideration, discussion and action.
7 ayes.
7. Still passed. Number 1 is the approval for the calendar budget. Mr. Atkins?
Mr. Chairman, this is an annual presentation kind of outlining the process that Mrs. Elledge and I and the board will take the coming budget cycle, budget season. And Mrs. Elledge, if you need to comment on this, please do.
We just plan to begin after the first of the year to begin gathering all the information from the different departments and staff, and ultimately bring back to you guys during the last part of May, first part June, presentations asking you to adopt budget and make those presentations to the county commission in June, with budgets ready to go in July. That is our calendar that we hope to see come to fruition. So we're just asking for approval for this.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 2, increase substitute bus driver's pay from $60 to $70 a day.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is another one of our attempts to try to get more interested folks. I know it's not a big jump, but it was mentioned by a substitute driver, the expense that they had to put forth to return to the system after retiring to be a substitute bus driver, and was paid at the lowest level. And so we wanted to do our part to at least get that to substitute teacher pay a day for those folks who are willing to sub-drive for us. We only have a couple, but we're going to continue to do our part to increase that number. It is a difficult lift right now with trying to find folks to drive buses.
I think that should happen, and I'd like to move that we approve this.
We got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Please call roll.
Weathers.
Yes.
Niter.
Yes.
Mabry.
Aye.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Daniel.
Yes.
Caruso.
Yes.
7 ayes.
7 ayes, motion carries. Moving on to 3, Loretta High School Gymnasium renovation change order. Mr. Atkins.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have mentioned in a couple of the updates, and I believe at one of the last board meetings, the amount of money that we're over on this project, and a lot of that came from issues with the soil when we first began the process, to issues related to the parking lot with soil. Our change orders, actually changing the structure of the building, adding these things, have been minimal. It has been some things with the soil and some price increases that led to this. But this is our final amount payment for the Loretta Gym. And if you've seen that gym, it is very nice job by the architects, and I know the Loretta community is very proud of it.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Please call roll.
Caruso.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Dryden.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Mabry.
Aye.
Niter.
Yes.
Weathers.
Yes.
7 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on, 4 was scratched due to no bids. Moving on to 5, outdoor career exploratory classroom tables. It'd be 6 for school sources and innovative grant. Mr. Atkins, do you have anything to add to that?
I'll yield to Mrs. Watson to speak to that.
Ms. Watson.
So this is the purchase from the integrative grant that is for the outdoor career exploration classrooms that are going to be built at 6 campuses. So we're asking for your approval to buy 8 outdoor metal tables for each outdoor classroom.
How much would that be? Do you know?
What was the?
Oh, here it is. Okay,
Yeah.
it's on there. Okay.
Because I don't remember right off the top of my head. I sort of do, but.
How many did you say?
8 per classroom. There'll be 8 per classroom.
To 48 total?
Yes, sir. And they're the nice metal, coated.
Here they are.
Powder
Metal
coated?
ones. Mhm. Yeah, that's what it is.
Which schools?
The schools are Summertown Middle, Etheridge Elementary, E.O. Kaufman, Leoma, New Prospect, and South Lawrence, 6 schools.
Do I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions for Ms. Snyder? Please call roll. Thank you.
Weathers,
Yes.
Nodder,
Yes.
Mabry, Jacobs,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Caruso,
Yes.
7 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to 6, the Lawrence County High School welding shop renovations.
And once again, this is if I remember correctly, Mrs. Watson, this is innovative grant dollars as well, where we're expanding that welding shop at Lawrence County High School. I believe we have done similar work at Loretta and Summertown, but maybe not to this extent.
Right. The welding shop at Lawrence County High School is in need of quite a bit of updating, ventilation. We're adding some welding booths because we have such a growth in enrollment. So that is what this bid is about.
Do I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions regarding?
Are you going with the DMC Inc., the 480,000 one, or the 488?
The
The 480.
480.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Please call roll.
Caruso,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Mabry, Nodder,
Yes.
Weathers,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Moving on, 7 was scratched due to not enough information. And moving on to 8, robotic dogs, total of 61.8. Funding source is ESSER 3.0.
And Mr. Chairman, at the last board meeting, we had a presentation from our students with the robotic dogs and the drones, and I know this is an additional 4, I believe, 4 or 5.
The innovative school grant dollars purchased the ones that we have currently, and that only covered middle school and up. So this would enable the elementary schools that did not receive those robotic dogs to be able to get those as well.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any questions for Ms. Ridgway? Very well. Please call roll.
Weathers,
Yes.
Nodder,
Yes.
Mabry, Jacobs,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Caruso,
100% yes. Them dogs were awesome. They were so cool. I wish I had one of my own, my other dog, but that's here to say. Moving on to item 9, audio enhancement Beam Pro system, total of $30,674. coming from ESSER 3.0.
Mr. Chairman, we presented this maybe 6 months ago or a year, and since then we've had other teachers who have expressed interest in having these devices. If you recall, it's a speaker that will sit in the classroom, and then the teacher wears a lanyard with a device around their neck that projects their voice. It's very effective in the lower grades where learning words, sounds, syllables, but I've noticed that even into the 3rd and 4th grades, some teachers are using that, and Mrs. Ridgway can comment on it, but we have several folks that speak highly of these, and she may have some testimonials to share with you.
So anytime that we use federal funding, I reach back out and get feedback to make sure that the equipment or whatever we purchase is being utilized, and or if we need to make any modifications or what needs to happen with it. So one of the comments from a teacher about the equipment was that she loved it. She felt like it leveled the playing field for all of her learners, no matter where they were seated or what direction her face was turned. They could hear her speak. So that's very highly, and then all of them responded positively about how it had impacted either their discipline in their classroom or the ability to hear certain sounds. We did have 2 teachers that got the equipment last year that just didn't feel like it was a good fit for them. We had 22 teachers in this second go-round that have requested it. So those 2 speaker systems will go to one of those 22. That's why we only need 20. Because, of course, we want to always make sure that we're utilizing the funds the best.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I remember several years ago, I had a teacher, and I think this was provided through a grant that New Prospect was able to obtain. But I'd just like to speak to that and highly recommend this. And it was a great asset in that particular classroom.
When you think about students, and Mr. Adkins offered this to pre-K through 2nd grade teachers, when you think about those students learning those sounds, it's very important that they hear them correctly. And so enunciating those sounds is important, and this is an asset to that.
Right. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion to approve in a second. Are there any further questions for Ms. Ridgway?
Mr. Crusoe,
Go ahead.
this is probably the best money that can be spent, because we don't know, Ms. Ridgway does not know what children are sitting there that have difficulties, period. And if it would help one child, it's well worth every penny that we spend on this.
I agree.
We have some students, these specific systems, the students that we do know that have hearing issues, their monitors will pair with this system, so the teacher doesn't have to wear 2 lanyards. The teacher just has to wear the 1 lanyard, and it projects into that student's system, and then also for the speakers for the other students to hear.
Please call roll.
Caruso,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Jacobs. Yes. Mabry,
Aye.
Niter,
Yes.
Weathers,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, personnel items for consideration, discussion, action. Number 1, approval of tenures for teachers.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Thompson in Human Resources, she deals with this. She handles the State Department, Tennessee Compass, trying to figure out who's eligible, working with the principals. She coordinates this tenure process, and it's an important process for educators, and I've asked her to present the candidates tonight for board consideration.
Good evening. It's good to be back with you guys tonight. We have a nice list of teachers that we are presenting for tenure. In order to receive tenure in the state of Tennessee, you have to have worked in a system for 5 years and received the last 2 years that you've been working a either 4 or 5 level of effectiveness. So all of the teachers that we have mentioned today have their 5 years of experience, as well as their 2 consecutive years of level 4 and 5. We do have a few teachers on this list that were previously tenured in Lawrence County, And they came back to us, they learned that they needed to come back home, and when they came back home, they needed to work for us for 2 years before they regained their tenure. So we have a few of those on our list as well. So what I'll do is I'll just step to the side and I will call names and let people stand, and then do you want to do a picture?
Yes, we can have them come up, or we can do it at the end, whatever.
You tell me what you want to
Don't we
do.
approve them first and then call
Let's just
them?
have them stand.
Okay, we'll just have you stand as I call your name. From Ingram Sal Elementary, Miss Dawn Brown. From Loretta High School, McLean Bryant. From Lawrence County High School, Sandy Cook. I did say Loretta for McLean, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay. For South Lawrence School, Audrey Duncan. New Prospect School, Brad Dye. Summertown Elementary has Miss Elena Essery and Miss Lori Glass. South Lawrence School also has Mr. Adam Rutledge. We have from Summertown High School, Miss Beverly Welch. From Lawrence County High School, Miss Courtney Willis. Lisa Ambrose, Lawrence County High School. Jelena Franklin, David Crockett Elementary School. And Willie Joyner, Lawrence County High School. Some of these teachers were not able to be here tonight with prior commitments and other things, but we are very proud to call them tenured in Lawrence County, given your approval.
Do you have a motion to approve?
We approve.
Do you have a second? We have a motion to approve and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Congratulations. Never turned down to do a photo of myself. I'll go in the back. How about that? Fourth on Paul.
All right. Ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Yeah, that's true. Moving on to policy items for consideration, we have 3. Are there any questions or comments or anything we'd like to discuss before we approve?
Chairman Caruso, I'd like to make a motion to approve all 3 of these policies.
We have a motion to approve all 3 policies. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries on all policies. Moving on to item number 7, others. Items for consideration. Approval of academic calendar.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned earlier, 69% of the 376 respondents voted for this draft. We sent reminders, we talked about it, we met in the summer, we met again in August, and we will go ahead and begin scheduling for the following year, and we have some recommendations from our advisory committees on some calendaring ideas in the future. But we believe everyone had an opportunity to see it and voice their opinion. Now, whether they chose to review it and voice an opinion, I can't speak to, but I do know that everyone who submitted a question on the calendar survey that I sent received a written response from me in an email. And so there was, I think it was 25 pages of written responses, typed out responses sent to the employees.
Do I have a motion to approve the calendar?
We approve.
Got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Atkins? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to B, our next board meeting will be January 18th at 5:30. There will not be a December meeting due to holidays and all that. Moving on to,
Is that January, I'm sorry, Chairman Crusoe, is that a Tuesday or a Thursday?
I'm not sure, I don't have
It
a,
should be a Thursday.
18th, yes, a Thursday, thank you.
so Thursday, January 18th at 5:30. Then moving on to the last item that was added, prior approval of executive committee. I believe I added that just to, there were some sidebar conversations on the last meeting. I think it was at the end of the meeting of a discussion of who approves executive committee, who brings them up. And according to my information is, since I've been on the board, is the Michael, the director, brings it up and sends the approval, to get approval through the chair. And then if the chair had any questions, they would sidebar and they would talk and get more information. And then from that information, it gets approved. Most of these executive committees approvals are, they're time constraints that has to be approved to go forward, or to get the money to get approval to go forward, or trips that was failed to bid on the agenda and get approval. So being that said, it was some discussion of, well, it's really not, it's not fair that two people can approve X amount of money, saying, in the millions or in the thousands. So I said, okay, we'll just bring it up and see what the board said. So, and then we reached out to Mr. Daigle, and he gave his opinion on it, that, it's just entirely up to the board. If the board wants to reconfigure or redo it, that's entirely up to the board, or to add another person just to relieve sole discretion for the chair, we can do that as well. So I think you have the letter that Mr. Cagle had wrote back, and I think Mr. Atkins did put it on the update for y'all to review. So do you have anything to add, Mr. Atkins?
I will speak to a question posed this afternoon by Dr. Mabry, and I have some information I'll pass around, because he'd asked me to do some work on this. I want to make sure I've got that to him. So the question, I think, if I understood Dr. Mabry correctly, was an item that had been in a consent the prior month. Would those items be brought back to, say, this month's meeting? So we had an October consent items to November, and you can see the question that I posed to him, is an item executed by executive committee approval previously submitted in a consent item, because the board had these items in consent prior to my arrival. I'm not sure where that began, but they were in consent. If it's in consent in October and approved, voted on, whatever the consent is, can that be brought up at the next board meeting? And his answer was no, and you can see the explanation. And he says, based on his understanding, that the need to reapprove prior actions of the executive committee is not needed. It was on the agenda, it was approved in the agenda, there's no law addressing that. If it was previously approved, whether as a regular agenda item or a consent item, is to be considered approved. And so I clarified with him, so once approved by a vote or in consent, the item is approved, and he said yes. And then I asked for his further explanation. It can only be reviewed at the time that it's being presented. So if we had a consent item tonight that was questionable, it can be pulled out, and then the board has the majority vote to address that. But once it has been approved, it's not pulled back out again to be reconsidered.
So you're only talking about the executive committee approvals, correct?
I think you could do it on anything, but
Okay,
this is
okay,
all I'm
okay.
speaking to here, that
Okay,
once it is in a consent item and approved, then it is approved.
Okay.
But at the time, you can address that consent item and ask for it to be pulled out, ask the board to vote on it, and the board can vote on it, yes or no, and that can be considered. But once it has been approved and passed on from a consent to the next item, it is official. So I tried to capture the question the best I could in the text message and conversation. His explanation on the very top was sent to me in a text message because he is flying to other meetings and doing things, but he did text that to me that I will share if anybody wants it. But it's exact verbatim is that one.
So, my question, okay, go ahead.
Hey, can you give us a specific example of that? Of like what you just said?
About pulling something out?
Yeah.
Let's say something was on there tonight for consent. If an executive committee item were under consent, as it had been, and it lists all of those, and you had a question about some CTE or textbooks or whatever, you could ask for discussion to be on that, and then ask, would the board vote to pull that out for further consideration. But once it's passed, or once we move from consent, from number 1 to number 2, it's approved. You can only address it at the time that it's before the board. Does that help you any?
Yeah, I think that does help.
Yeah, it doesn't help me. I've never seen anything in the consent items that refer to money. Are we talking about making money decisions and voting with executive committee?
That has been what
Yes.
has been the practice of this board.
I have never seen anything pertaining to money in the consent item.
It's actually listed as report items.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was looking at the new one, I think. Yeah.
I think in
Sorry.
previous months, those have been listed as report items back to the board, executive committee approvals that have taken place.
I was looking at the current, we made the change after the discussion last time. That's my mistake.
Okay. So if something is in the report items and the director reports to us, we've got this coming up, this could possibly be a expenditure for the board, and you kind of give us a report on it. And then if we vote that night to approve, well, we don't ever take a vote on the report items.
That's true.
We've never vote on the report.
So
how is it approved if you've never voted on it?
So the executive committee, according to the law, according to Mr. Cagle, the executive committee can make those decisions, share with the board, and then the board is made aware of it at the next board meeting. Is that in the email?
So I think that's what the controversy would be, that if
That's what
I approve an executive committee, if it be it for an X amount of dollars, it already been approved, and then it'll be on the report item. Now y'all, it can prod up, well, that's a lot of money for just 2 people to approve. And I think that's where this issue is coming up from. So my question is for the board is, it doesn't matter to me or Mr. Atkins who approves it. If you want to hold off to approve a X amount of dollars to have, we can do that. But I think the question is a time constraint issue that it has to be approved before the next board meeting. So my concern is, well, if we don't want one person to approve it or 2 people, let's add people such as the vice chair and chair to be going both of them. Does that make sense?
Well, what is the limit? I mean, let me back up.
So
What I understood in these
think there is a
emails,
limit.
what I understood in these emails was our attorney, Mr. Cagle, was, and that's why he has a recommendation for a motion to be made, So it kind of goes back and approves everything that the executive committee has already approved. I mean, Mr. Atkins does a great job in keeping all of us updated on things that may be coming, but what is, and I think you may have just said, there is no guideline to what, hey, this exceeds the amount that executive.
That's right.
So we've never put a cap on
We have
executive
not.
committee.
So you can put on, the statement for executive committee can read pending board approval. So you could have an executive committee tomorrow for something, and we don't meet again until January. At that point, the executive committee to purchase a new forklift at one of the schools would not be approved until the January meeting. So we would either lose the price on it, lose the shipping, whatever it could be. So if you have a pending board approval, as it was recommended by another director, then you don't need executive committee because it doesn't expedite the process. It doesn't move things forward. We're dealing with a playground issue right now that requires executive committee because of the sensitivity of the surface and things like that that needs to be moved rapidly. That did not fall within the window of time to put something on the agenda. So that would be one example. I think.
Sorry, I'm don't mean to interrupt, but just so that I can give an example that affects me and the work that I do. When you're thinking about like the ESSER funds that we've had, and I know we won't have those forever, but there was a time that, you know, we were trying to make purchases that affected things that were going to go in the kids' hands, like programs we were purchasing for the students that were going to fill those achievement gaps. So at that point in time, we would ask Mr. Atkins to bring that to y'all for an executive approval, or we would have to wait a month in order to purchase that, and that delayed those academics and things getting into the students' hands. Just like the virtual goggles that we had to take off because of not getting the bid in time for y'all to approve tonight. Well, that means that those, without an executive approval, those can't be purchased until after January's board meeting. So those are things where, I mean, I understand the need to make sure everybody approves it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it is an important aspect of what we need to consider to make sure and purchase things in a timely manner.
That's
Mr. Crusoe.
true. Go ahead, Dr. Bell.
I think the problem arose from the fact that it was such a large amount of money.
I agree, and it was
Okay, wait a minute.
it was a lot of
It was such a
executive
large amount of
committees
money.
at that time.
And everything on that executive committee approval was not an emergency. For example, one of the things was Tier 2 bus drivers. I would ask, whatever the board decides, I can live with. But I would ask that if you're talking about such a large sum of money,
On one particular
you
item.
can call a board meeting. I mean, you have that authority to bring the 9 members in and vote on something. I'm not an attorney, but it strikes me, if we go the route that Mr. Atkins is talking about, 2 people are going to decide, or can decide. It doesn't have to be Michael Atkins or Kevin Crusoe.
I agree 100%, yes, right.
2 people can decide such a large sum of taxpayer dollars.
I agree.
And that's why all 9 of us were elected. And I understand totally. We have no authority whatsoever unless we're sitting here in this boardroom.
That's right.
I understand that. But that's putting those 2 people in such
I know you're going to.
position
I agree.
that I wouldn't want to be in that position. I wouldn't. And I would suggest, this is just a suggestion, that if we have expenditures that get up to that amount, call a special session. If the 9 board members aren't dedicated enough to show up for a special session to do the business of the school system, we don't need to be on the board. And I think it would put you, let's take names out of it. It would put the chairman of the school board and the director of schools
Yes.
in a very unsteady position to approve that kind of money. And that was it. In the past, it's been those things like a field trip came up, or
That's
something
correct.
else
That's correct.
came up, or maybe an emergency roof repair. And I understand that, but if it can wait or call a special session, that would be my suggestion.
Brenda, go ahead.
Well, I've been on this board, this is 21 years. What I have understood about executive committee, the reason it was started was like field trips, or you had, we're not going to have a meeting next month, you had an emergency, water lines busted, whatever. That gave you the authority to do that. But at first it was like $5,000. If it was over a $5,000 amount, board had to approve it. Then I think it went to 10. But the main purpose of the executive committee was for emergencies and, like you said, field trips that we couldn't get to. But I think it's really got out of hand because it's putting you and both of you under the liability of people looking at it and saying, hey, 2 people done that. So, I mean,
Any
I
further
wouldn't want to be in
comments?
your shoes.
Any further comments?
I agree with my fellow board members, and I understand what Ms. Ridgway, Mr. Atkins, what y'all have to deal with when things come up, and needing to be able to make some decisions to get the ball rolling. But at the same time, I mean, it's quite the conundrum, because myself and the rest of these board members were voted to were elected to be sitting here to make those decisions as a board, and not to pass that on to 2 people to make that decision. So I agree. I think, personally, I believe we either set a cap or totally do away with executive committee passing expenditures.
Any further comments, questions?
Just so you know, executive committee is in the statute, Tennessee code, so it is allowed for only the chairman and the director. You can't be anybody else, because that's a violation of open meetings law. So we can't do that. And if the board chooses to go that route, I mean, that's a choice you make. You'd have to decide, do you want to call special sessions, because there are times when we may have things over multiple days coming in that require. So it could be an ongoing process. I don't know. I'm just telling it could be.
In today's age of technology, what does the law say? You know, you're very good. You communicate with every one of us. There's a group text messages. You can email. You can give phone calls. Is there? What's the law say about? Okay, yeah, we still have an executive committee. You two. But before you two give the executive committee approval, you have contacted every one of these board members.
I think that would be a violation, if I understood Mr. Cagle correctly, of asking you how you will possibly support or not. Let me say this, I think if it's done a certain way, it might teeter on that line. And I'd want to get clarification from him before I would put the board in that situation.
Mr. Crusoe. Ms. Jacobs and I attended a TSBA workshop required. And at that workshop, they had a director of schools. And it's been about, 3 years? Something like that. I can't tell you his name, and I can't even tell you what county he came from. But he was presented as the director. And he told us in that meeting, board members from all over the state, that he spent the whole day prior to a meeting, like we meeting tonight, he would have spent Wednesday communicating with his board members, answering questions, getting opinions, whatever. That's one way. We have met on Zoom. I didn't care for it, but we have done that. We have passed agreements that board members could speak if they were out of doing something else. They were sick from home. We've had that happen. So whatever happens, you know, we need to look at all of this. If it's like Mr. Daniel says, if we need to set a limit, or if it exceeds that limit, have a special session.
Can we do that? I mean, is that?
I think that's the
I guess
board's
we
call
can-
there.
We can do that, yeah.
Yeah, that's y'all's call if y'all
That's
want to do
what
that.
we did in the past. I think, Kevin, you were on the board at the time too. It went from, first off, it was 5,000 and then they
Right.
upped it to 10 and then there never
I
was
think that
anything
was
else
just for,
said.
I think that was for bids and not executive. It was for bids, right?
No,
Mr.
it was
Rackett,
executive committee, couldn't, it had to be brought to the board if it was over. Executive committee could approve it up to a certain amount, but if it exceeded that, it had to come to the board.
It's my understanding that if an expenditure exceeds $10,000, that it has to be bid.
That was in the past. I don't know what they got
Is
now.
that not?
It was 10, but now it's 25. The statute changed a few years ago to 25.
I never had heard them say any more about it.
So if it's 25,000, it has to go
Yeah.
quote.
But I think we're
Other
talking
than
about,
25,000, you're allowed to, or I guess, it doesn't have to have quoted out, you can just go get a vendor to provide it.
Anything between 2,000 and 25,000 has to be quoted out from 3 different vendors based on policy.
Anything from 2,000 to 25,000
Yes, sir.
has to be quoted out to 3
Anything over
different vendors.
25 then comes before the board, has to go for bid and comes before the board for approval.
So with these executive committee dollars, they were, okay, but we're looking at spending money so we can meet a deadline, maybe save
Yeah,
a few $100
yeah,
because of
that was my
this, that,
next
and the
comment.
other.
That's correct.
I mean-
Yeah. So, I mean, give me suggestions. I mean, I'm open. We can table this till next meeting. We can make a motion tonight. I mean, that's,
What was the
I
dollar
mean,
sign,
I
Mr.
kinda-
Mabry, on the one that you were
I
requesting?
mean, I kind of like the motion to,
Last month,
Yeah,
Jessica, what was the total of the executive committee?
but you gotta admit, I mean, that was several executive committees that wasn't just one. You see what I'm saying? I mean, if we put a cap on it,
124, wasn't it?
then how many were that?
124 or 134,000, I don't
Yeah,
remember which.
124. There
And that
were,
was, how many approvals?
there are, for that month, there were
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
there
6,
were
7.
6.
7 executive committees for 124,000.
yeah, because you had an 81,000 and a 43,000 for technology. And so is that an emergency?
So if any of those would have not been approved at that particular time, what would have happened? What would have, I mean, would y'all have not bought them or?
I'm a tier 2 bus driver. The tier 2 bus driver wouldn't have had to been approved.
For 26,000?
Well, I tend to think differently on that one. I think that this board just recently received an email from a gentleman who was saying that he was disappointed or something to that effect about not having child care or bus service this week. That bus is being driven by Mr. Rogers. And if Mr. Rogers wasn't driving that bus, we'd be hearing this more. For the last 15 months, Mr. Tucker and Mr. Rogers and myself made it our goal that the school system is not going to call parents at 1:30 or 2 o'clock and say, sorry, you can't get your kid home today. You're going to have to drive whatever you're doing to go and get your child. Now, that could happen numerous times. And I'm not sure the board would want that on their plate saying, what are y'all doing over there? We have drivers that get sick, they have emergencies. These tier 2 drivers, we don't call around and say, so-and-so will you drive, so-and-so will you drive. They know that when they signed on and contracted with us, they're to drive when we call them. And so I can't remember the last time that we had to call and tell someone, we're not going to take your child home. You need to stop working, drop your, whatever you're doing, and come pick your child up. Now, if the board doesn't want to go that route, that's fine. But I just remind you of the email that you received this week of someone about not getting their child to school. Our goal has been to make it run smoothly to get those kids home. It may not be the time they want, but mom and dad aren't having to take off work to do that. So I view that differently. I think Mr. Tucker can speak to the phone calls he dealt with numerous times when we've had to cancel bus routes, and we made sure that this board wasn't doing that. But if we don't want to do that, that's fine. I do consider that emergency, though. I treat that a little differently.
You know, for me, Mr. Chairman, if it's coming out of a grant or ESSER, you know, federal dollars that was sent for certain things, that doesn't give me the heartburn that coming
I
out
agree.
of
That's
fund balance.
that's when I look at when I say yay, no, or let's do go forward. I agree. I agree with that statement 100%.
Those are all things that are prior approved by the State Department.
Yes.
Like I have to submit those to the State Department. The Department has to approve that that's appropriate expenditure for that grant.
Yes, so
correct.
grants
So-
and ESSERs or however, you know, but when it comes out of
The
County.
fund balance, county fund balance,
Or, I mean,
kind of,
even, not just the fund balance, I mean, like here, we've got a funding source, the general purpose technology budget. But now, if we budgeted for that, and that money's in there,
it's all,
then
why not
okay.
go ahead and release that money?
I guess the
agree.
things
I agree.
that are not budgeted, that are
Well,
unforeseen.
and that was the other comment shared with me. Once the board had approved the budget, there really wasn't a need to put the technology on there. That's just more of a courtesy notice because it had already been budgeted. It's not required. So if we have budgeted for 5 school buses, when we purchase those 5 school buses, it's not
When we
required.
approve that budget,
Yes.
we all know that there's gonna be 5 school
I think
buses
Mrs.
purchased.
Elledge and her practice is to always have been transparent to make sure the board knows everything that we're doing. And I think on our executive committees, we do the same thing.
But on that, Mr. Atkins, if you say you're gonna buy, if we budget in 5 school buses, but there's 5 companies out there that you're getting a quote, I think it is the board's
It is.
Yeah,
position to
yeah.
approve which one we go with.
Policy is that you guys
Yeah.
approve any bids
Yeah.
that are put out.
So even though we
So that's-
budgeted and we've approved the budget, it still has,
You're
still should
for
come
bid.
before
You're
this
still
board.
approving the vendor that we're moving
Yes.
forward
Yes.
with on the bid, yes.
And that's what this is. On the technology was the vendor.
But that's really left to the board on how you want to proceed with this. But I do think, based on Dr. Mabry's question last time and Mr. Cagle's comment on another email about correcting the board's past practice in that motion to move everything prior to the November 1st date, that was his recommendation to do that. And then the way we have it on the agenda tonight be the practice going forward with the executive committees as far as that. Now, if the board wants to do something more with executive committees, then that's your call. You are absolutely welcome to do that.
So once again, any further comments, questions? Is there a motion that we need to bring up?
Can you go back to the email from Mr. Cagle?
Sure.
That was,
I think it's in your handout.
no, this is the email from,
Okay, okay.
from Mr. Mabry and the
That's
question.
it, that's it.
And then scroll back up. There we go. So I'm fixing to make this motion. Given that the method for approval of actions for executive committee has recently changed, I move that the board ratify all actions of the executive committee taken prior to November 1st, 2023.
Are you seeing?
Mhm.
So that's,
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I think I need clarification on the motion, if he'll repeat it.
So this motion, I give that the method for approval of actions to the executive committee has recently changed. I move that the board ratify all actions of the executive committee taken prior to November 1st, 2023. So this is just putting into record that we as a board approve of the decisions made prior to November 1st by the executive committee.
And from my understanding, it would be any executive committees, because he doesn't specify from this time frame to this one. He's just saying from this date going backwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
From November 1st of 2023, going backwards, any executive committee approvals, we as a board, this motion is saying we as a board approve of those committee decisions.
Which you've already, where was it in the previous ones, under report items?
That's a report item.
It was already, I guess, according to Mr. Cagle and what we sent today, those were already approved.
This is a formality.
Formality, because the board is asking to change its practice and establishing a new practice going forward.
That's why I asked for clarification. So we're not changing anything. We're just, as you say, following a formality. So I can give a second to that.
So we have a second. We got a motion and a second. Please read the motion one more time, please.
The motion is on the screen in front of you. It says, given that the method for approval of actions of the executive committee has recently changed, Mr. Daniel moved that the board ratify all actions of the executive committee taken prior to November 1st of 2023.
So I have a question. So what has changed about it? What do we change it?
I don't know if have you gotten that from you?
We haven't got there yet.
That's only ratifying
Okay.
previous.
All right. Go ahead. Is there a question over here?
Well, I may have missed something here, but given the method of approval of actions of the executive committee has recently changed, my question is, how has it recently changed?
Yeah, that's my question. What's the change?
What have we just changed?
We haven't changed anything yet. I'm just simply stating,
So what he's saying is we just need to go back and go ahead and approve. Before we make a change, we need to approve all that other stuff that's already happened.
can I amend
It's already been approved.
my motion?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend my motion to simply state that I make a motion that the board ratify all actions of the executive committee taken prior to November 1st, 2023.
I don't think you really have to amend it. You're just changing what you've stated. I think that's appropriate.
You're right. You're correct. Okay.
Do you still?
Second that, Mr. Dryden?
I will.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to amend and a second. So read the amendment.
So as amended, Mr. Daniel moves that the board ratify all actions of the executive committee taken prior to November 1st of 2023.
Any
Mr.
questions?
Crusoe, and this is the recommendation of our legal counsel.
Yeah, I agree.
This is. And he is known as a very smart
I agree.
attorney.
I agree 100%.
And if he recommends something,
Yeah, I agree.
I believe we ought to follow it.
Just for correction, I don't think this is an amendment at all. This is just a stated motion by Board Member Daniel. Okay?
Mr. Chris.
So
If it were an
don't need to
amendment,
vote
we'd
on
have
the
to vote
amendment?
twice. We don't have to do that.
Okay, I agree. So
Mr.
we'll go back to the original motion and a second. Go ahead.
For clarification, Mr. Daniels, we're housekeeping, clearing up the housekeeping up until this time.
Up until November 1st, according to my motion, November 1st previous. We as a board are saying if you vote affirmative on this motion, we are agreeing that we're all in agreement of all executive committee's decisions, expenditures passed. November, nothing going forward. And no changes being made to what we're doing
Right.
executive committee, just
That's
cleaning
In
it
other
up.
words, your housekeeping, getting us cleared up.
And going forward, as I understand
Well, we haven't
it,
done that
every executive committee decision will be voted on by the board.
We haven't decided that yet.
That's to come up next.
That-
Okay, all right.
That hasn't decided that yet. So we have a motion and a second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Crusoe?
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Mabry,
Aye.
Nidert,
Yes.
Weathers,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Do we have to come up with something?
I wasn't on the agenda to come up with something. What was on that? Correct?
I don't know, I'm asking you folks.
I mean, are we gonna do something different with executive committee? Because we've not stepped away from, we've not changed anything.
I agree.
I mean,
We haven't done
we've
that
ratified
yet.
everything from November 1st, but we've not done anything different.
I agree.
from November
So if
4th.
we want to continue with this discussion, we can do that. I don't have a problem with that.
For,
We got one pending though that we'll have to cancel.
Which one? The Evers?
No, the fence.
Oh, the fence, that's
Yeah,
right.
we'll have to cancel.
Yeah. So wasn't that already approved?
Yes, right, but it's after no.
Oh, it was after, that's right, that's right. So we have to cancel that.
Or I think Mr. Snyder has.
Go ahead, Mr. Knight.
from what I'm hearing, I think we probably need to take a little bit more time with this and think through it a little bit better than what, I don't hear any kind of consensus on anything that we could possibly vote on tonight.
I can make an emotion. I've got mine, or at least throw out an idea. I mean, what I have in mind is if it hasn't already been previously budgeted, and if it's coming out of our general fund, and it exceeds $25,000, it needs to come before this board. That would be my
Is that a motion?
What, Mr. Chairman, may I
Go ahead,
speak?
yeah.
The fence you're talking about that's already in the equation,
Yeah.
kind of, what number's on it?
That one is 11-4, I think.
So it's within his motion.
So we won't have to ratify.
No,
Yeah.
if you go
If
with,
it
Yeah.
passes,
if you go with Mr. Daniels, we won't have to.
Go ahead.
As you reflect, how often have occasions like this, or situations, I guess would be a way to word this, or circumstances developed that would prevent you from, as an executive committee, from proceeding?
Of course.
No, I guess too, I was thinking a while ago, would we, or are we possibly going to set ourselves up to where we would miss out on some grant opportunities, best proposals? I'm not talking
No,
about.
not if he does what he's saying, because he's only, go ahead.
I've got another question along those lines. Well, I'm sorry, I lost it. Go ahead.
That's age, you know.
Jessica, could you roll that up to the next? Okay, thank you. Number 7 says to submit for approval at each regular meeting of the board a full report of all business transacted since the last regular meeting.
And he does, and he
To
does
submit
it.
for approval at
He even
each
puts it
regular
on the
meeting.
Sunday.
I've got it back. I got my thought back. If I make the motion of the idea I just threw out, and something came forward that exceeded 25,000, and we had to call to Mr. Mabry's, I like his idea and agree, a special session. What does the law state? Is that going to be a 7-day before you can get a special session called?
It could be with the new rules. Yeah.
Is it 7 or 10?
Well, we have to give,
How many days notice?
I think is it 5 or 7? Do you remember?
I was thinking it was 4.
I was thinking it's 3 or 5.
No, the law changed. The law changed this year. And so once you have to post the agenda.
Before we can have a meeting to vote on anything. And we can have a meeting you can have a work session, because nothing's being voted on. Is that
That's
correct?
That is correct. As long as you don't vote on something, that's correct.
I don't know. I'm not sure where you're going.
Now, if something were an emergency that we needed, that exceeded whatever number if we were to make this number, if there was something that exceeded that number that we needed to make a quick decision on, call it to Mr. Maverick, we've all been elected to fill this position. Call a special session, get us in here and let's make a decision on it.
Can we do that?
Right here is the policy on notification of meetings, line number 7. In the event of a special board meeting, a notice shall be provided at least 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Right,
3
2
days.
days. I thought it was 3.
What year is that, though?
That, it was updated in June.
48 hours.
2 days.
48 hours.
To call a special session.
Yes, sir. If you guys read that and make sure you're interpreting it the same way I am.
See, the purpose of a special session is for emergencies and things that need to be taken care of between
3
meetings.
days. No, 4 days.
48 hours is
40 hours, 2.
2 days.
So you're going to make a motion? Go ahead.
I mean,
Well, we
I guess
need to
that's the only-
table it.
That's the only way that we can sit here and talk about it. And so I will make the motion that moving forward from November the 30th, 2023, that we continue to allow executive committee decisions on any expenditures that have been previously budgeted and/or comes from a grant of federal funding, and anything under the amount of $25,000. And if the need were to arise for an emergency expenditure that exceeds $25,000, that the director and the chairman call a special board meeting. Somebody write that down because I can't repeat that.
I was trying.
Does that make sense? I mean, does that make sense to anybody? Nobody?
Yes, I know where you're coming from.
At least that's some guidelines.
Mr. Daniel, could you add state grants? Because
Yes.
to that, because innovative grant is state.
State and federal grants?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So can we amend that to state and, or
Just add it.
just change that to state and federal grants? So, again, because I think I got it in my head what I've just said. Executive committee will continue to approve everything under the amount of $25,000. Everything that is previously budgeted, that we all voted on in the budget, and everything that is coming out of a state and/or federal grant. And if any of their emergency arises that's above the $25,000 that needs to be approved quickly, we call a special, the chairman and the director call a special session.
It'd just be the chairman.
Chairman. And that's a 48-hour process. 4 days or 2 days.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second.
We just do it.
Please read the motion. I'll get to it. Read it for clarification.
I will attempt to read
Go
that
ahead.
back.
You're welcome.
So moving forward from November 1st of 23 forward, we will allow the executive committee to approve any expenditures that have, one, been previously budgeted or are coming from special grants, whether that be state or federal grants, and continue under the amount of the $25,000 bid threshold. In the case that an emergency arises, then a special session will be called for any additional approvals
Above the 25.
above the $25,000.
Yes, I agree that that's what my.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, any comments?
Yes.
Clarifications, go ahead.
I think I can live with this. I do want to, if I may, direct a question to these supervisors. As you reflect in your past, to fulfilling your past responsibilities in your current positions, I know both of you work closely. Because of your position, it's required actually to work closely with our director. Can you think of any time in the past where this motion would have prohibited you from proceeding to do what's good for the kids of this county, as far as making purchases?
My concern is, John, Mr. Daniel, are you putting a $25,000 cap on federal and state? Because a lot of what we do, like I'm needing to get that concrete poured as soon as possible. Like I've got to find some people, we got to get concrete poured.
No.
Because Katie's got goggles that are $78,000.
No, if it's, my motion, or the intent of this motion, if it's federal or state, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's,
That was my only concern.
that $25,000 is only for unbudgeted, ungrant awarded, coming out of the fund balance of
That's right.
the system.
Okay, I'm glad you had that clarification, because that's where
We were both like,
typically.
oh, no.
Yeah, because, and I appreciate you asking that question, there's no way do I want, or anybody on this board want to handicap
Right.
anybody in our system from doing their job. So
So-
I appreciate that question.
So you two ladies that have a very, very important position or positions in our county feel good about this. I mean, you think,
If the 25,000 is not in the cap. I feel good because we present the grant budgets to you. So you've approved the grant budget. I'm not allowed to purchase anything out of the grant budget that's not state approved on top of that. So I feel good about that.
Mr. Russell, I'll pose the same question to Mr. Atkins.
Yeah,
Is this
I was
going
going
is this going to handicap you?
No, not based on what you just said with the state and federal. That's not going to be a problem, because most of our expenditures come from those. Most of our executive committees are those expenditures.
I mean, the intent of that motion was to give this board, or give this system some guidelines that make sure that we're not, two individuals are not approving anything that all of us were elected to sit down and discuss for.
it appears to me that we can live with this as stated, this motion as it has been presented, and I'm ready to vote.
Dr. Maybe.
I want everyone to understand, this is a framework that protects whoever the chairman is and whoever the director is, and puts the decision squarely on the 9 members of the school board above what Mr. Daniels has said. And if y'all can live with that, it sounds like a solution to a problem to me.
I've got one more statement. Now, in the motion, it does state excluding the federal and state funding, correct? Okay. Is that what it does, Ms. Ellen?
Yes,
Okay,
that is
okay.
correct.
All right.
So anything below 25,000 from the general purpose executive
Executive
committee,
committee can roll.
$25,001, we need to have a special session.
Either hold off till the next
Till
month
next
or call a special
Exactly,
session.
exactly.
And for any overnight trips or things of that nature, that's
If it's
not
not-
addressed here,
if
so
it's not
those are
expenditure, it's
continue to be approved.
Yeah,
Okay.
to me, if it's not dealing with money,
Yeah.
the executive committee can continue doing what the executive committee does.
Please call roll.
Caruso,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Mabry,
Aye.
Nidert,
Yes.
Weathers,
Absolutely.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Before we adjourn, I want to say to this board, what an excellent job we just did tonight under that issue. We talked about it, we hashed it out. It might have taken 30 minutes, but I commend every one of us that just sat here and approved that, made a motion and seconded. So once again, I say to anybody in this school system and anybody in the community, we've got one of the best boards in this system that I've ever been on. So thank you very much, and I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.